Hey everyone, Jonas from Island Works again, back with a little bit more fun in my garage, where I am building the fastest Porsche 964 that I could ever build in my garage. Today, I promise to connect the engine to the rest of the car, because once I do that, and I push this button, it's gonna start, and that's gonna be really cool. So, without further ado, let's have a look at that. This episode was supposed to be about me putting the engine harness onto this engine. I figured out that before I can do that, I actually need to get the engine into the car so I can measure actually where it sits in the engine room. So this is what I'm gonna do today. It's gonna be a short one, but it's gonna be really sweet because this is the first time this one goes in here. And I was thinking, should I actually make a little bit of a competition on what this car will actually weigh now that I have the engine and actually everything that this car will have into the car. So you know what? Let's get this one in, and as the car comes down, because I have to put it down once I've done all of this work, I'm actually going to see what it weighs. Target is 964 kilos with everything that I need in it. I think we're going to get there. I could have made an episode about how you put an engine into a 964, but you know what? I've already made an episode on how you take the engine out of this one, and then I made another episode of how you take an engine out of that one, so I don't think I'm gonna do that. My method, however, is I have this little hydraulic jack table here, then I have the car on the big stand, and then I just take this one up just like this. Now I'm going to lower the car down, attach the back of the engine and the gearbox. Once I have attached the back of the engine and the gearbox, then then off we go. So that's what I'm going to do now. It would really help a lot having a friend here today, because the difficult thing with this is not anything really, other than you have to be on one side and the other side at the same time. And if you make a mistake, bang. And this far along, we go for the other direction. Threaded the two in the back. Now I just need to go and attach the bolts at the forward gearbox mount. Then I can take all this junk under out, and the car is actually a car again. Only took like 4 years something. Terrible. Oh, look at that. And with the engine in, I think we need to start prepping this area so that we know what's left of the harnessing. So the whole purpose of putting the engine in now is to understand, for example, what are we going to do with this? Is the fuel rail routing here, is that going to interfere with anything? Where is the power to the engine going to come in? Is it going to come in from the side up here? Is it going to route around? What am I going to do with that? So that is what I'm going to figure out. And the first thing and the first issue I want to get out of the way is fuel rails. Right? So in my car, the fuel comes up there and returns there, just like it does in any 964. But usually in a 964 you have a fuel filter there, which I don't have because my fuel filter is in the front. So I need to connect the fuel rails. I designed and manufactured my own new fuel rails. The other ones were out of stock. That was one reason, and they didn't have all of the things I wanted. So these are the new ones that I have now. And then attach the fuel hose that goes in between the two rails. It sits under here. And then we take the rail on the other side. It looks a little bit different because it has a regulator in it there, and on the very end we have a fuel pressure sensor. Right, so the fuel from the other rail comes in there, distributes to the injectors, and then it goes out there. And then the exit is here, and it will go on the inside up there. Let's make up some hoses and see how that looks. So I made up two hoses here. I'm not sure how I can show this in a good way, considering that it's in there, but I'm gonna mount both of them first, and then I'm gonna show you what it looks like. Okay, so this is now what we have. All of this is now like this, which will not do. But I think it is a concept that will tuck very nicely in behind the intake. So what I did was I created these. So this is just a little clamp that you put it onto the hose like that. And then onto the hose again, and it will hold them together. And I will put one there, I'll put one just over here, if I can clamp it together, right, so that they at least behave like one unit. Let's see if I can get the last one in here. It's pretty tight. Okay. So what this would mean is that rather than shaking like crazy all, they will like shake like one unit at least. I think I still need to have a holder over here, something to just hold it here so it doesn't move against the engine here. So I will still make something here, but this was a nice little addition to make it sit a bit nicer. So the things related to the engine are nicely taken care of in the original setup of the 964 with this nasty looking little console that sits exactly in here. Can you see that in the camera? Yeah, maybe. It sits really just on the back of the last little leg of cylinder 3's plenum. And it sits there, and you connect a number of things. In the bottom, you have your fuel return, which we've already taken care of, right? It tucks in nicely there so you can't see it. Then you have 3 sensors on this one. One is the cylinder temp. One is your crank speed or the crank sensor. One is the NOx sensor on the left bank. And then, fantastically enough, you have the NOx sensor on the right bank you have up here. Moving on, you have brake vacuum, and the last piece is for your carbon canister, which is for emissions. So if I look at what I have left of this one in this setup, I only have these 3 sensors here that I need to have a solution for, because the harness needs to come in there and they can't just lie around the engine and rattle around. Looking up here, this is what it is. I don't want to have this thing, because this is super essential for the engine to work and to be safe. I don't want this just lying around. And the 2 green ones here, that's the NOx sensors. The yellow one, which probably was white at one point, is the cylinder temp. And this one is the speed sensor for the crankshaft. So I replicated the geometry of the original bracket that sits on the 964 just to collect these. And this is what it is. And with that one together, I can start thinking about where I would like to have this guy. And there is one spot that I like a lot. And this is how it could be. So we got them sitting nicely like this. This will of course be some kind of sheet metal in the end. I think this looks quite good, but I see that I've forgotten quite a few important things, such as, look at this guy. So this is actually the connector for the lambda probe. That now that I see that this concept will probably turn out quite well in the end, now I want to connect a few more things to that console that are things that sit together with the engine. So this is the lambda probe. it goes down, 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 down on the exhaust. And looking over here under the car, we can see how the lambda probe, how that comes into play, and I'll show you here in a second. On my car, cylinder 1 to 3 has one lambda. They also have one exhaust gas temperature probe, so that I get some feedback if something is terribly wrong with the engine, then I can actually see that with the exhaust gas. I won't see which cylinder it is, because you could have exhaust gas temperature on each and every cylinder. I don't get that, but I have so that I can see if it's left or right bank. And then on the other bank, I have the same thing, one exhaust temperature and one lambda. This is how it looks up close, right? So we have the headers. Right now, one is wrapped, the other one is coated. I will figure out what to do with that in the end. I haven't decided yet. But we have a temperature sensor on this side, right? Just after the collector. And then we have the lambda on this side at an angle. And then this comes up here. And it goes against the valve cover. And then over there it goes up into the engine bay. And it will be exactly the same on the other side. And naturally, when you collect this many things, it turns into a little bit of a mess. How are we going to collect all this stuff? So I think it's back to the drawing board for this. And yeah, I'm sure we're going to come up with something really neat to tidy this up. And we are back in the studio where all of this good stuff in the garage is coming in a digital form instead. So we have the intake here, together with a crude scan of the top of the engine that I had lying around. The task now is to figure out this area on top of the engine here, how this one can get the cables that are lying around there consolidated, because not only those cables, but also the cables up here on the intake, where you have the map sensor, you have the solenoid for the resonance flap, and you also have the connector for the throttle body. Those actually need to come together in some way here and get sort of done up. I've created a little piece that sits under here, which is like a cabling hub. It sits here, and from the front you will see it a little bit like that as well. And what this guy does is it just consolidates the cables so that you have them in one spot. And if we go into this one and look at what it is, it's just a little piece like this. It will hold the two NOx sensors, the cylinder head temp, the two lambdas, the two temp sensors for the exhaust, as well as the crankshaft speed. It will hold a few other things like the cable or the hoses for the fuel lines. It will just help stabilize those a little bit, and it will hold the Motec CAN converter as well. So a few things with that. And this one sits there so that it can consolidate the cables in a good spot. I did one more thing just to show off a little bit here, and that is I started doing the wire harness in here. And what this means is that I've actually started doing up all the wire lengths inside of here so that I can actually measure how long all of the individual ones are supposed to be. And then as I do up my wire harness, I already have the lengths done up. So that's going to be super easy. And I'll just drop that into my E3. That's the software I use to do wire harness, the E3 from Zuken, and this is SolidWorks here. That's the tool I use for my 3D CAD. Put that together, and then I can do everything digitally. And then when I go down to the engine, I just hook the harness up and I'm ready to go. Let's take this, put it on the engine and see how it looks. Tinkering around with this for a while, we get to this. So this is now my connection hub for the engine. That also provides a little bit of support for the fuel lines here. And up here I have cylinder temp, I got lambda and the two lambdas coming into the Motec converter here. So this goes out to the ECU for the two lambdas. Then I have the cylinder temp, and then I have the engine rev here, or the crankshaft speed. There are a few other sensors in here as well, as we saw before. I have an oil pressure and oil temp there, and then we have the things on the intake. So this now will all be collected and consolidated, and it will come up to this point over here. I'm back again in the studio for the next little challenge, which is now that we have a hub where all the cables come out and we've sort of figured out how to pick everything from the engine up, that needs to go somewhere as well. So I've added another little piece of the 3D scan in this, which is the left side of the engine bay. This is usually where you have your ignition coils, and there's a big box there which is called the rear electric. So for my challenge now, I'm going to design a new rear electric and a new little hub for the ignition igniters. So this is what I've done. I've created a new little piece there that sits in this little area where the other one used to be. So hiding the intake on this one, we see where this one sits. We see that we've created a few different ways of connecting with this one. We have one input in the very top here, which is where the ECU comes in with all the signals. Then we have one in the middle here, which is called power. This comes from our PDM, with the power distribution module where the power comes in. And then the last one is sensors. So sensors, this is the one that goes out towards the engine. So let me show you that again. This is the one that then connects to the harness that we started there. So this one picks up everything on the engine. Then we connected or created connectors also for cylinder bank 1 to 3 and cylinder bank 4 to 6. So these two connectors, they will actually distribute a separate harness to the cylinders on the left bank and a separate harness to the cylinders on the right bank. So you will have 3 harnesses on the engine, essentially. A left bank harness, a right bank harness, and then a sensory harness. So this is the concept with this one. I'm going to put this one in the printer, and we go down, we put this on the engine, and we see if we think this is going to be a good concept or not. And this is then the next piece that we designed up there. I put the circular connectors in it. You see it's like that. Really cool, and always cost a fortune, of course. A little special in there as well. I put a brass bush in there to transition the chassis earthing point into this box, because I need that for the ignition. That's where I'm planning to ground that piece. Let's put this in there and see if it actually follows the curvature as planned. Okay, and here we go. That's a pretty slick fit towards the curvature of the car. I would say it's perfect actually. And we have the 2 inputs and 3 outputs. Let's get the cover plate on so we can see what's what. Okay, so that is what we're getting. So ECU, top right corner, then power. This is actually this one here. I just need to put a connector on it, then I can connect that. Then we have bank 1 and 3, bank 4 and 6, and then sensors. So sensors is the harness that is going to come out, go up here, and then pick up everything on the engine here in the back. And cylinder 1 and 3 is going to take this piece. Cylinder 4 and 6 is going to take this piece. And we should be ready to go. I think that is just about as far as we're going to get today, except 2 little things that I will get to in a second. Today we have figured out how to get that cable hub going, the hoses around the fuel rails, and how to make that look really discreet. Also, we have replaced the old rear electric with the little cable hub thing there with the 5 circular connectors. But before I let you go for the day, I am going to tell you 2 things. First one is how big of an idiot I am, and I'm going to show you that in a second. And then we're going to see how much the car weighs, because I did promise you that in the beginning of the episode. But first things first, let's look at just how big of a mistake I have just made with this. So look at this brilliant maneuver that I've made. I put these spark plugs. They're not spark plugs, they're actually coils with igniters into them. And you know what? This kind of Bosch type that fits so perfectly in the valve cover, it does not work even by a long shot in a 964. they work. In those, that's my 76 Targa, but in these ones, you can forget about it. So I will fix this, as I try to do with everything I do, by using these kind of pencils. A good friend of mine recommended these. They're a little bit safer because it's only a coil. There's no electronics in this one as well. And electronics in a different place is actually these igniters. So this is the 3-channel Bosch igniters. They are unfortunately quite pricey. It's more than 100 euros a piece of these, and you need 4 because there's 12 spark plugs, and then I need 12 of these. So that little blunder there is going to cost me quite a bit. I'm not terribly happy about that. However, I'm going to get to a much better ignition system because these are going to sit very far away from the heat. And remember this episode where I was so worried about the heat? I'm not worried about heat anymore because these are going to sit far away from these guys, and this is now only a coil. I'll post some images on Instagram where these are going to be. They're going to be just next to the rear electric, so it's going to be really, really cool. This is the first item of me being, yeah, maybe not as clever as I sometimes think I am. The second piece is getting this guy on the ground so we see finally what it's going to weigh. Okay, here we go. Corner weight scales down on the floor. We are ready to go. Got all 4 of them in. So, have you placed your bets? I think I have a pretty good idea what it's going to be, but let's see. Here we go. I have my little app. So we have a 964. We see all the corners here. And I'm going to go over there and we'll see how this goes. Okay. You're not going to believe this. Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. The corners are all completely crazy, of course. But we got 32, 33 in the front, 67 in the back, 857 kilos. Pretty good. What are we missing? Not a lot. Anti-roll bars. Yeah. Front windscreen. Yeah. Everything else is either assembled to the car or lying in the car. So my goal was 964 kilos. I think we're going to have like 50 kilos margin to that. It's only 1 seat in the car and, you know, 50 kilos margin at least. Yeah, maybe more. See you next time.